Hi, I'm Scott, and welcome to Episode 3, Series 2, Child in Time, Growing Up in the 60s. Welcome back, everyone. Thanks for joining in. Now, just before we start, a very quick revision, as I know some people have not listened to the first series yet and just dived in Series 2. So just to put it all in context, I grew up the eldest of 4 boys, all born within a 5-year period, and we grew up in what was then a working class suburb and attended a local public school. Yeah, about being the eldest. I remain the eldest even to this very day. And to regular listeners, I'm sorry for the long gap between episodes, but I'm working on it. And also thank you to those who have pointed out that I have occasionally mentioned things that spill over into the early 1970s. Well, the term the 60s has often been described as an era from, say, 1963 to 1972, if you look at the changes and cultural upheavals in that time frame. Inevitably, we will move into the early 70s in this series or the next. Okay, so let's get started. This time we're going to look at style. The Australia of the 1950s was a very conservative place. The baby boomer kids, and there were a lot of us, were sufficient in number and age that by the mid-60s that the new fashions, music and overall outlook of the young often butted up hard against the mores of the past. Long hair on males, miniskirts, polka dots, and then the tie-dyed T-shirts, bell-bottom jeans and cheesecloth shirts were emblems of the hippie ethos that emerged in a cloud of incense and macrobiotic rice. This was the era prior to a time many kids became little more than mobile sandwich boards for the major sports brand emblazoned on all manner of casual clothing that we see today. As the eldest child, I was always the first out of the trenches in the culture war, with my dad as the bastion of the old world order. Talking about hair, until the mid-60s, there were essentially just 2 hairstyles for men and boys. It was short back and sides, or a crew cut. Our 60s school photographs contain not a single hairstyle that would, as they say, draw comment. The coming of the Beatles and the like, however, heralded a desire for long hair that this would come to full fruition in high school. Some of my high school photographs depict every single guy with shoulder-length hair. Every guy, even if it didn't suit them whatsoever. In a public high school, they let us have our hair as long as we wanted. Okay, so let's talk about some clothing. As kids, there was still very much the concept of wearing your Sunday best. This meant the clothes worn to church and or Sunday school. A female acquaintance told me that Sunday best for girls included hats and gloves. Mum would put out shorts and shirts on our beds every Sunday morning. But our usual roughhouse play was severely restricted when in Sunday best, because you could not get your good clothes dirty or you would be in big trouble. Once we're all suitably attired, we would go and see Dad. He was waiting for us in the bathroom to do our hair. He had this hair fixative which closely resembled cheap glue more than anything else. He would style our heads with the concoction until all 4 of us lads had rigid pompadours. These would quickly set like rapid drying cement. The black and white pictures that survived from those mornings depict us as looking like 4 small Elvis impersonators in short pants. The Sunday best outfit would also be used on the fairly rare occasions when we went to town, that is, Sydney, CBD. For me as a child, it was a wondrous place. All the people, the noise, the tall buildings, the big department stores like Anthony Horton's and Mark Foy's. It was just magical. The picture theatres especially captivated me, and many of those long demolished theatres were just wonderful pieces of architecture. There was the Century, the Mayfair, the Forum, the Plaza, the St James, Rapallo, and the Globe Newsreel Theatre. Whether I was with Mum, Nana, or any other relative holding my little hand, I always asked if we could go and see the film showing at any cinema we happened to walk past. The only person who ever agreed to my request was Pa, my dad's father. He took me into the Globe Newsreel Theatre in George Street once. We sat and watched the newsreels until the first one came on again. Admission was $1 or 10 cents. Pa was a great guy. I spoke briefly about his premature death in a Series 1 episode. Okay, so I've gone off on a bit of a tangent there, but that's okay. Back to hair. Every 6 weeks or so, when I was in infant school, Mum would give me 3 shillings, or 30 cents, and I would safely tie it into the corner of my handkerchief. The money was for the barber, located only a minute's walk from the school. Although the shop was on the main street, the salon itself was down a short corridor and windowless, dark and dingy. There were 2 barber's chairs on one side, and on the opposite side of the room was some old chairs and a low table, topped with a grubby stack of old Pix magazines. That was a popular tabloid publication. There was a slowly rotating ceiling fan and a shaft of light that struggled down the corridor from the street outside, all adding to the feeling of being part of a film noir. It wouldn't have surprised me if Humphrey Bogart had walked in and asked for a cut and a shave while he was laying low from the feds after being caught up with some femme fatale. The barber himself, Cess, would emerge from the mysterious back room. Although he was old, he was tall, straight-backed and white-haired and friendly in his own laconic way. He had a lit roll-up cigarette permanently dangling from the corner of his lip, and with the scissors in one hand and the comb in the other, he could only mumble lest his cigarette join the carpet of cut hair beneath the barber's chair on the linoleum floor. Once in the chair, he cut your hair, and that was it. There was no discussion. There was no, yes, Cess, I was thinking, maybe today I'd have a low fade or a slick back this time. What do you think? Afterwards, I'd emerge blinking into the sunlight of the afternoon. Smelling strongly of whatever that lotion was he would deliberately douse your head in when the cut was finished. I passed a men's barber or hairstylist, or whatever you call it, just the other day. There was a sign advertising a haircut for $30. Cess charged 100 times less. For school, our household budget didn't stretch to leather shoes for 4 boys, so up until high school, we wore plastic sandals to school. They were much cheaper. But the shoes to have were black leather Barter Scout school shoes. Remarkably, these shoes came equipped with a small functioning compass hidden beneath the lining of the heel in one shoe. A compass. I would have loved to have had a pair of Barter Scouts. If I had had a pair of those beauties, I might have had an experience like, say, a friend might have approached me in the playground and inquired, "Oh, excuse me, Scott, I was just wondering which way is north?" And then quick as a flash I could say, "Sure, I can help you there. Just a minute while I untie my shoelaces and take off this shoe and lift up the flap." Ah, yes, north is that way. One day my brothers and I were each gifted identical brown polo shirts. Even Dad had one for some reason. The shirts had a GT stripe running vertically on each side of the chest and were made of a material that was really closer to plastic than anything that could be called fabric. Despite them being hideous, we were all obliged to wear them to various events as a proxy family uniform. I was eventually excused from wearing the brown team colours after I took off my shirt one day to reveal the allergic rash the shirt was giving me. If you think of some of the iconic fashion staples of the 60s, say jeans and a t-shirt, and or for ladies, floral dress or cheesecloth hippie-like clothing, a lot of it still looks pretty cool today. Contrast that with the look of the 70s, particularly around the disco era. If you dressed up today in your best mid-70s finery with hairstyle to match, you'd probably be going to a fancy dress party. I personally know of many couples who were married in the 70s, and unlike many, their wedding day photographs are not on display. No, they are buried away in a drawer somewhere, not for display lest their children or grandchildren see the photos and ask about all the purple, mauve and yellow on display, along with the big sideburns, the bell-bottom trousers and the wide velvet collars and so on. Jeans, yeah. I remember when I got my very first pair of blue jeans. I don't think I'd ever been so thrilled with a garment. Although only 11, I felt all grown up and worldly. I felt like a cowboy, a mini James Dean. I would have happily decamped from suburban Sydney to take up residence at Andy Warhol's art factory in New York City. How cool would that have been? Andy Warhol never called me, but no, it doesn't matter. I wore those jeans every day, except Sundays. Finally, look, I love it when listeners get in touch with me about the podcast, but this is something a bit different. When my father passed away some years ago, I sold some of his things that no one in our family wanted to keep, and one of those items was an old Super 8 movie projector. In the 1960s, it was nearly state-of-the-art to take silent colour movies and show the 5-minute reel on a wall. Just this week, the buyer of the projector contacted me and said there was some footage in the box that we didn't know about. He went to the trouble of making a digital copy and he emailed it to me. And the reel depicts the 4 of us boys swimming about in a local pool somewhere. Alan, thank you very much. I'd send you out a package of Child in Time merchandise, a cap, coffee mug, t-shirt, hoodie, and bookmark. But I can't, because those products exist only in theory at this time. Thank you for listening. And please tell anyone you think might enjoy this podcast or where to find me. And we will talk soon.